for ratification, and that's the process that was put together. And who did the ratifying? Again, was it the state legislatures that had called this thing to begin with? No, no, no. They weren't given the first say in what happened when ratification came along. So what we, again, know from the historical record is that, one, when a constitutional convention is called, there are absolutely no limitations on what can take place when that constitutional convention is called. Two, it is Congress that gets to select who these people are, how they're appointed, how they're paid, how their business is done, and where they met. And three, we have absolutely no assurances as to what ratification might look like. This is a highly dangerous, destructive, ill-conceived piece of legislation that at face value has some merit, but when you dig into the details, we realize that this could truly mean the death of our republic. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Representative Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to my good friend from Butler County, I'll remember what you said about Keynesian economics the next time you want. The next time you want a project to come to your community to build business and jobs. Second thing is the question I have is the whole reason for this balanced budget amendment and line item veto is ostensibly to pay down the $10 trillion debt we've got. The question I have is, though, does a balanced budget amendment allow for surpluses, which would ostensibly go to pay down the $10 trillion debt? If you have a balanced budget amendment and you're coming out even in the end, aren't you just keeping the debt's not going up, but it's just staying where it is? Is that a potential issue as well?
Well, I think clearly, and I thought you brought up a great point with regard to, hey, we have declared war or undeclared war. I mean, how does that work? I think the language is somewhat troubling. I think to a certain degree, the language almost doesn't matter. When you look at the Constitution, for example, there's absolutely no provision whatsoever that allows for foreign aid. They're absolutely not allowed to do it. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them authority to do it. Yet they spend trillions of dollars in foreign aid. So, I mean, we can have all the rules we want in the document. If they're not followed, to a certain extent, it doesn't really matter anymore. The Constitution that we have works and takes care of those issues because it's not trying to micromanage it. It's not trying to parse syllables. I mean, we've got a whole system of government in a tiny little document. I don't know that Congress could write a seatbelt regulation that was as short as our system of government. So I think really what it comes down to is, let's take a look at the rules that we have, start enforcing those, and the system will take care of itself. We'll deal with issues as whether there's surplus or deficit, those kinds of things.
Other questions? Then thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next witness is Terry Owens from Delaware, Ohio. Terry, welcome.
Chairman Blessing and members of the House Judiciary Committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide opposing testimony on House Joint Resolution number 8. My name is Terry Owens from Delaware, Ohio. This is my first time testifying in a legislative committee. I don't want to waste precious time explaining who I am because my background, ethnicity, race, religion, or vocation does not matter to this issue. I speak as a citizen of Ohio who, no matter what special interest categories I might fit into, stands to be irreparably harmed by the ramifications of calling an Article 5 convention. The quickness and quietness with which this legislation emerged and is moving is especially troubling because of this. With all due respect to Representative Huffman, opposition to a constitutional convention is not about fear, but rather wisdom. The consensus among jurists and constitutional scholars is that once a constitutional convention is called, in accordance with Article 5, state legislatures have no authority in the method of selecting delegates, and no authority to limit the scope or outcome of the convention. The only precedent for this in our nation's history was the first Constitutional Convention, which was called to amend the Articles of Confederation. Indeed, this became a runaway convention that emerged not with an amendment, but a brand new form of government and constitution, which only required 9 of 13 states to ratify, rather than Article 13 of the Articles of Confederation, which required that all state legislatures consent to an amendment. A constitutional convention creates a sovereign body of representatives of the people, and no limitation of the state legislatures can restrain the delegates. Would a constitutional convention become another runaway jeopardizing the political protection of the God-given rights of Ohio citizens? Is it wise to take that risk in today's divided political climate? Associate Justice Arthur Goldberg summed up the answer this way: if the question is whether a runaway convention is assured, the answer is no. But if the question is whether it is a real and serious possibility, the answer is yes. In our history, we have only one experience with a constitutional convention, and while the end result was good, the convention itself was a definite runaway. In addition to the dangers of a constitutional convention, the most glaring problem with HJR 8 and its companion bill, Senate Joint Resolution 9, is that a constitutional convention is not even needed to address the problem cited. Applicants for a convention should only be used if a legislature believes that the present Constitution is structurally flawed and in need of repair. An unbalanced budget is not the result of a constitutional flaw. Rather, it is the result of a Congress which consistently ignores the constitutional limitations upon its spending of federal funds. I've emailed to all of you links to a 4-part video called Beware Article 5, which was created by legislators to help you take a closer look at the serious implications of an Article 5 Constitutional Convention. All 4 parts can be viewed at principalpolicy.com. Chairman Blessing and members of the committee, I strongly urge you to vote against sending this bill to a floor vote. It comes down to whether you believe the possibility of obtaining a balanced budget amendment is worth the risk that our entire system of government could be changed. And Chairman Blessing, I know that you've been a 20-year advocate of a constitutional convention at least. And I urge you to allow your fellow legislators the time to discern the wisdom of calling a constitutional convention. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for the witness? I had one based on your testimony. You indicated that, I guess the question I have for you, when is it appropriate to call a constitutional convention under Article 5?
As I stated in my testimony, if we believe that there's a part of the Constitution that's fundamentally flawed that needs to be repaired, and even then, it's still a very risky venture. You have to take into account the political climate. You have to realize that that is a sovereign body of representatives of the people, not the states, representatives of the people. And they can come out of that changing the fundamental system of our government.
Well, we already know what the structure of the Constitution is. That's not going to change.
I'm sorry, say that again?
We already know what the structure of the U.S. Constitution is. That's not going to change.
Right, but for example, one of the things that you want to do is grant the president the line item veto. That, I think, changes the structure of the Constitution because you are granting legislative power to the executive branch of government, to the President of the United States.
I guess, again, the question is, I get the feeling you don't think that Article 5 should ever be invoked.
In today's political climate, absolutely not.
So the Constitution does have flawed parts, according to you. Article 5 being the flawed part.